Miami's looking to improve their roster, but one particular transaction has kept them from making major changes. So was the acquisition of Terry Rozier the worst move in franchise history? We'll debate that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins on FanDuel. Have a fun show for you today. Kashad Johnson didn't mince words when he was asked about his goals for the season. Plus, we debate the greatest team ever in Florida sports. But first, I want to start with this piece on ESPN that listed the worst decision every NBA team has made over the past 5 years. And for the Heat, they point to the Terry Rozier trade as the Heat's worst decision. The last 5 years is basically the entire Jimmy Butler era. Makes it nice and clean for us in terms of this conversation, David. So do you agree that the Terry Rozier trade was the worst decision they made during the Butler era?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty clear. I think there's a decision that took place just before that in 2019 that just misses the cutoff that might give it a little bit of a run for its money. But I'll go a little step further and say that maybe the acquisition of Rozier might have been the worst move in franchise history. For a team that takes pride in making smart moves and having a vision and understanding what it takes to get them to a championship level, Rozier just backfired so badly. And I don't think it was anybody's fault in particular. I'd love to be able to put blame on Terry. I don't think it was his fault necessarily. And I'd love to put a blame on the franchise, but they were finding a position of need and filling that with a player who seemed to bring to the table a desperate need for Miami's offense, which was being able to get to the rim and attack the paint and create some opportunities for an offense that had been so stagnant for such a long time. And they certainly weren't getting that from Kyle Lowry, especially when he seemed more passive than ever on offense. So it's hard to debate any move in the last 5 years and maybe even further back than that being worse than acquiring Terry Rozier, especially because it's limited them so much in what they can do in trading away a first-round pick in order to acquire him.
Yeah. I have some honorable mentions, but I'd have to agree that Rozier's the worst. I think it's pretty clearly the worst roster building decision that this front office has made over the past 5 years. Not only because Terry Rozier has been bad, but also what the other options, what the alternatives to trading Terry Rozier could have been and what it cost them. You mentioned the first round pick. That cost them a valuable draft pick to use in trades. I don't know. They probably still don't have enough to go out and get Kevin Durant, even if they just had that one first round pick available. But they are actively trying to go get a 2027 first round pick in order to unlock the ability to use up to trade up to 4 first round picks. So maybe if not Durant, maybe it could be somebody else. So there's an opportunity cost there. They also, remember at the time, they were internally debating, do they go Terry Rozier or do they try to trade for DeJounte Murray, who was being shopped at the point. He didn't get traded until the offseason to New Orleans, but he was being shopped at the time. Now, reports around then indicated that Atlanta was asking for a lot for DeJounte Murray, and I don't know. It cost Miami 1 first-round pick for Terry Rozier. Would have been 2 first-round picks for DeJounte Murray, and if so, that also doesn't feel like a great allocation of resources, but they could have went DeJounte Murray over Terry Rozier, and who knows? He probably doesn't tear his Achilles or whatever. I don't know what happens to DeJounte Murray, but he's a better basketball player than Terry Rozier. It also cost them Caleb Martin in the ensuing offseason. I don't know how big of a deal that was, but when you look at how much of their cap space was basically allocated to Terry Rozier that summer, because at the time, Kyle Lowry was an expiring contract. Right. And had they not traded Lowry and certainly not traded for Rozier, who was under contract through, these couple seasons here, they could have re-signed Caleb Martin. Again, I don't know that would have been the right decision. That I don't think that I would have done that as much as I liked Caleb Martin. But it also cost them a chance at DeMar DeRozan. Let's remember. Like they probably could have pulled off a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan. There is no question DeRozan would have preferred to come to Miami than have to go to play in Sacramento, right? So it might have cost them a chance at DeRozan. It also put them in the luxury tax, which is something that they're still fighting to try to get out of. So there's a lot of reasons why, besides the fact that Rozier has just been bad since they've traded for him, that was a bad trade.
I mean, I think we can all agree, and maybe I know there were some detractors when the transaction took place, but I think overall it just made a lot of sense. Like Kyle Lowry had been, and it's always so important to remember the mindset at that particular time. Like he started off so miserably sluggish or just unwilling. I don't even know if it was sluggish necessarily.
It was weird from training camp, David. Like remember when Gabe Vincent finished the 2023 season as a starting point guard, then they lose him in the offseason, and then Kyle Lowry comes back and is just sort of penciled in as the starter. And I remember we were asking him at training camp in Boca Raton, hey, do you think you're going to be the starter? Would you be open to coming off the bench? And he basically was like, no, I'm the starting point guard. And from there, there was just friction between him and the coaching staff.
Yeah, Josh Richardson. I remember him getting testy at training camp. I mean, it was just a lot of weird vibes going on with that team there. And I think he was a little checked out at that point in time. And so the acquisition of Rozier made so much sense because, again, his ability to get to the paint, that had been something that had never really been in doubt. He was so much of a better shooter during that time in Charlotte. And I don't know what went wrong. I don't think there's anything in particular. It's not like he was much more wide open in Charlotte. There was a team that lacked any kind of scoring punch whatsoever.
There's the gambling probe that is. I have to imagine that's a level of a distraction to him that that he's dealing with or worrying about. And then there is the Nick injury that was very mysterious, and the team never really was transparent about in terms of the severity of it.
On it wrong,
right?
And
it went from
on
sleeping on
brace.
Exactly. I do have some honorable mentions though.
Yes.
I have 4 honorable mentions that I could think of. Again, this is just for the last 5 years.
All right, I got you.
Because I was going, based off the ESPN piece here, but overpaying Duncan Robinson. Love Duncan Robinson. It ended up being an overpay. When you lose your starting job and you basically aren't part of the rotation for a full year while you're in a shooting slump, that's tough. Overpaying Duncan Robinson is one of them. Betting on Victor Oladipo being a star next to Jimmy Butler and dealing with that for basically 3 seasons.
That was low risk though, right?
Yeah, right. And that's why it's an honorable mention, but it was a mistake nonetheless. Like it felt like maybe they could have, diverted their attention elsewhere during those 3 years. Not replacing Max Strus or Gabe Vincent in the summer of 2023 and chasing Damian Lillard instead. The more I think about that offseason, the more it's so clear that the Heat just bungled that. Because if you're not going to go all in for Damian Lillard, then you better replace Strus and Gabe. Right. And they tried to thread this needle and they never got it. And it just felt like, okay, either you're going all in for Damian Lillard, and that's the guy who's replacing Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, or you're not going to go all in for Gabe Vincent or for Damian Lillard, and you're going to go out and replace Gabe Vincent, Max Strus with other free agents or find another way to replace those guys. So they bungled that. And then not finding Bam a consistent front court partner, right? Just that rotating cast of guys, whether it was Jay Crowder, PJ Tucker, having to force Kayla Martin into a power forward sized hole. Like all these different options that they never really landed on one. That was also a mistake.
I'm surprised you didn't go not trading Jimmy Butler over the summer.
That was also a mistake. They eventually had to trade him. So that was also a Jimmy Butler mistake, I think, too. But
that's fair. That's fair.
But
I mean, all of those.
It's a good one. It's another honorable mention. Not trading Jimmy Butler in the offseason when they should have.
And the one I had mentioned before that just missed the cutoff, the drafting of KZ Okpala, just to throw away the number of second-round picks that you did. And we see now how valuable those second-round picks have been in acquisitions around the league. And either you use those picks to get a first-round pick, you get a player of some consequence. It's just such a great asset to have. A second-round player has wound up becoming more and more parts of NBA rotations around the league. You see that they have greater value than they have ever had. And so it was a mistake from a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes in that sense. But, all of these are have cost a team. And it doesn't take any, it's not like they're huge mistakes. Like even just the acquisition of Rozier, it was a bad one, but at the time it made a lot of sense. The first round pick seemed, you know what? If you can get a 20-point per game scorer that can attack the paint with some efficiency and stretch the floor.
Well, even if he wasn't that, like you look at it like a team like Memphis that used a first round pick to go get Marcus Smart, but it didn't. I mean, it was a mistake. It didn't work out, but it didn't feel as bad because they weren't relying on Marcus Smart to be what the Heat were relying on Terry Rozier to be.
That's fair.
And I think where you were getting to with that point is not one of these mistakes isn't some huge like Joe Dumars level, like what are you doing kind of thing.
Right. But in combination,
you put them all together.
Yeah. And they wind up hamstringing your team from being able to make the kind of moves that you obviously need to make. And so you're kind of just figuring out, it's like, well, we made 5 little mistakes, but all of them together wind up being something that really hurts us and is a detriment to our being able to continue to improve our team. So it's just, you have to move forward. Like, it's almost funny because we talk about the offense being the same way where things have to go perfectly in order for them to be able to just have a good game and be able to score enough points to be able to skate with a victory. It's almost like the front office has mirrored exactly what they do on the court as well. It's like we have to be near perfect. Like,
because they don't have an abundance of resources, so every resource counts. You have to maximize every single resource.
To their credit, the Norm Powell trade seems like as close to perfect as you can get. Like if you could have a high rating for trades and only giving up Kyle and whatever you have to give up in order to Kevin Love, etc., it's a very good move for a team that has to make much better moves moving forward.
Always the optimist. Way to end on a positive note, David. Speaking of optimism, Kashad Johnson was straight up when he asked about his #1 goal for the season, but is it realistic? We'll talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Listen, if you start using FanDuel right now, it's so easy to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And right now is the time to join. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5, and you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or go visit FanDuel.com to get started. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Kashad Johnson recently said at the Heat's junior basketball camp on Tuesday that he wants to become a part of the Heat's rotation. Quote, "The goal is to crack the Heat's rotation and prove that I belong on the floor. Whatever that takes, they've invested in me, so that must mean they see something in me. So I just got to prove them right. Prove them right, make sure that they didn't make the wrong decision." End quote. David, do you think that Kashad Johnson has a chance of earning a rotation spot?
A chance? Yes. Not a good one. We like Kashad around here, obviously. Like I talked about him prior to the draft. I thought he was a great fit. And it was nice to see the payoff there, and that the Heat front office also saw something in him as well. And so we were believers from day one. He talked just like the perfect cut from the mold Heat player that you'd want to hear from. Talked about the culture and everything else like that. It seemed like it was a great fit, but we just haven't seen enough from him. Even what we've seen in summer league, again, it's summer league, so you have to be able to take those with grains of salt there. And I just think that I'm still not sure what it is that he can do at an elite level, where he can carve out some time specifically, because you have to go to a player like that. You're not going to get elite 3-point shooting. You're not going to get elite athleticism. You're not going to get the kind of size and versatility that you might need defensively. So how is it that Spo is going to justify throwing somebody who can do a lot of things pretty okay and nothing particularly great? And I think there's just enough of that on this roster already, and guys that I think they're more heavily invested in. So I don't want to seem negative about it, because I like his shot. I like his ability and his potential. I think there is room for growth there, and I think he's done a lot to continue to work hard. I just don't know if this is the right fit for him. He almost seems like a guy who better be suited on a team that has very little expectations, where he can just pop off the screen, because he does have enough athleticism, because he just does do enough well, where if he gets more opportunity, he'd probably be one of those guys where you could see who had a big 30-point game, and you'd have to check the box score to see that it was him, because you might not even know who this player is or that he even exists. And yet on the Heat, that's not what they're looking for.
He's
that's not
competing with, at that wing spot, Wiggins, Jaime, Fontecchio, Jovic, Highsmith. All of these guys are going to be ahead of Kashad on day one of training camp. Yep. I think he plays. I think he would factor in at the power forward spot. He's not enough of a ball handler to play on the wing. He's a little undersized for a power forward, even though he's got a positive wingspan. But even there, okay, is Bam the starting power forward next to Ware? Do they end up starting Ware at center? Or I'm sorry, Bam at center with Nico at power forward. I think that's a spot that's open for competition in training camp. But either way, Johnson's playing behind both of those guys. Haywood Highsmith, we know that he could play that stretch 4 spot. They've even, Wiggins is certainly capable of playing the small ball 4. He did it for a title-winning team in Golden State a couple of years ago. Jaime Jaquez Jr. could play the 4 in a pinch. Maybe, heck, they could even throw Fontecchio in there as a stretch 4 if they want. It would not be ideal, but again, is Kashad Johnson over him in that kind of pecking order? I don't know. So he shot 25% from 3 during Summer League.
Okay.
It's not good, and that's going to be the big swing skill for him. I like Kashad. The Heat love Kashad. But I've pointed it out before. I was surprised they gave him a 15-man roster spot so early in the offseason. I'm like, really? You couldn't have waived him and re-signed him on a 2-way? Why not? But they clearly believe in him. And talking to people in Vegas, man, they love the attitude. They love the approach. He works hard. They believe in him. And I think they believe in him the way that they believed in Caleb Martin early on. But I think it's going to take a couple of years of seasoning for Kashad, which is fine. That's fine. That's how the development program is built. We bring these guys in, we develop them for a couple of years, and eventually they backfill somebody like Haywood Highsmith or Simone Fontecchio or whatever it is. So that's probably where we're going to end up with him. So I don't know. I like that he's got the goal. Obviously, he's got to stand there and say, I want to play. Of course, he's an NBA player. Of course he wants to play. I just don't see it as, I'm not saying he's never going to play, but being a part of the nightly rotation, that seems a little far-fetched right now.
Yeah. I don't know that Highsmith, who's a far better defender, gets any playing time. If that's the thing. I don't think he gets any playing time despite his defense if he doesn't shoot 40% from 3. And that's the whole thing. If you're not as good a defender and Kashad isn't, he's not bad. I think he's got the size and positional length that you're looking for. At the same time, he's just not clearly shooting 40% from 3-point range. And so you can't be out there and be such a problem offensively. And this team struggles enough as it is. So it's just one more disadvantage. You need to be able to have an elite skill. Like we've talked about Miami's bench for a long time, and it seems like a guy like Kashad is perfectly representative of that because you just have so much. And I hate using this word because it sounds really insulting to NBA players, and I recognize that they're among the top players on the planet, and you have to acknowledge that. But within the context of NBA rankings, there's a lot of mediocrity towards the bench, and it's just they just haven't been able to get anybody to shine or pop off. Again, a Duncan Robinson doesn't happen unless he is one of the best shooters in NBA history. Max Strus has to be able to find ways to contribute across the board and play some better defense and play, shoot lights out during stretches. These are the way that these guys from the development pipeline find opportunities. And right now, I don't know that anybody on this roster, we're not even debating about undrafted players. I mean, guys like Jaime can't crack the rotation. Nico can't crack the rotation.
Well, can I tell you who's in my top 10 right now? And you can tell me whether you disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I've got Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, Kel'el Ware, and Nikola Jovic, and Davion Mitchell as a very
that's your top 7.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got a believer in Nico. I know we could debate this maybe tomorrow, but I'm just a little surprised. But so we'll put a pin in that because I think that's a good topic to continue because you seem to be, unless you've heard something.
I'm reflecting what Eric Spoelstra has said. I mean, he was when we asked about Nico in Vegas, he was very high on Nico.
Let's put a pin in that because I feel like this is another topic of brewing here for an upcoming episode.
Well, those are my top 7 in some order. Okay. And then penciled in here as my last 3 of a 10-man rotation, and that's obviously not set in stone, but I've got Pelle Larsson, Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Haywood Highsmith.
Yeah,
Just
I
as
have
my
the same
last,
three.
yeah, right. And so that means Terry Rozier, Kasparis Yakachonis, Simone Fontecchio, and Kashad Johnson, not part of the nightly rotation. Minutes here and there for whatever reason, but not part of your planned nightly rotation.
No Simone Fontecchio, who might wind up being your best 3-point shooter.
Well, outside
Alongside
of like
Tyler Hero.
Hero. Yeah.
Sure.
And Powell.
But I mean, in theory, yeah, sure. I mean, I just, who else are we missing here? I'm
That's
trying
it.
to think.
I named all 14 players on the roster. I mean, I'm not including the Vlad Golden, who's their only two-way guy. He's not going to be part of the nightly rotation. So,
right. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, it's and somehow I wind up thinking that Terry Rozier winds up leapfrogging into that second tier that you mentioned there.
He could compete with Pella, right? He could compete with Jaime. He can definitely compete with Haywood. Like, he could compete with those guys for sure if he has a better training camp.
Yes.
All right. Well, like you said, there's a lot more to get into there. We'll save for another episode. We debut a new segment next where we'll discuss a couple of mailbag questions here, including I'm botching this because I forgot what it was. Oh, what's the most dominant Florida sports team ever? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. All right, this is a new segment. We're calling it Locked Off Heat.
Nice.
It's a new segment where we discuss anything other than the Miami Heat. We got this question from a subtext user. If you want to join the subtext community, the Locked On Heat Insider community, you can do so by using the link in the show notes. They write in, what's the most dominant Florida sports team ever? I think this is a fascinating question. Can I lob up a couple of candidates for you, and then you can either add or subtract or debate me?
Sure.
The 1972 Dolphins they went undefeated, Super Bowl. Okay. Have to be in the conversation.
But is that what we're talking about? Like individual seasons or like amongst like all teams? Which one do you would consider? Because they've all had their peaks and valleys.
Oh, I'm like, what is the one team? Like a team for a season.
A team for a season.
Because when I left this part off the question, but the person who asked the question submitted that he thought last year's Florida Panthers are the most dominant team in Florida sports history.
Ooh.
Yeah, he specifically the 24-25 Panthers. So we're going to put them in the conversation. Okay. I think of the two Panthers Stanley Cup teams, that one was clearly superior than the one 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'll go the 24-25 Panthers, the 1972 Dolphins. I'll go... would you agree that it was the 2013 Heat was the best Heat team?
Yes.
But was the 2012 Heat team more dominant, considering that they won that finals a lot more easily than the 2013 finals, which took that
was
Ray
the
Allen shot.
Lockout shortened year, and I don't think you got the same sample size.
Sure.
You didn't have the same rotation players, no Ray Allen, etc.
But did they dominate their competition? The 2013 team was better, but did 2012 dominate their competition more than 2013?
But
they had a close call in the playoffs.
The 2012 team was easier for them to just go right into it because of the lockout, because they were so top heavy. So it's like we bring our three guys and you bring your three best guys, and our three guys are going to beat them. So it was just because of the way that the whole season played out. I think it was better for a team constructed like that version of the Miami Heat were. So they may have been more dominant, but I still think the 2013 was the best Heat team in Heat history. Like, I think
so. We're gonna nominate 2013 then.
I would say so.
Okay.
27 game win streak usually does it for you.
That's true. That's a good point. The 2001 Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah. Even though the next year's team was even better, they got robbed.
That's absolutely true. That was not pass interference, and we all know it. The question asks Florida sports. I'm assuming they mean South Florida, because there were some great Tampa Bay Buccaneers teams. But I don't care about that. So I'm gonna alter the question. I'm just gonna go to South Florida sports, if that's okay.
All right. What about Seminoles football?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about the Tebow Gators.
Gators.
Like, ugh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Tebow Gators. They're probably. I
ugh.
mean, they had like how many?
I can't talk about them. So we're gonna
Nice.
alter the
You're
question. Just
nice.
talk about South Florida. I believe that the questioner was asking about South
The
Florida sports.
spirit of
Am
the
I forgetting
question.
anybody?
Where's UCF rank in that? Is that considered South Florida or not?
Nah, it's Central Florida.
All right.
But the 2019 team never got a chance, but we wanted Bama.
Well, hell, we can't go 2003 Marlins, 97 Marlins.
No, they got in as wild cards. I don't consider them dominant. They won. I love those teams. They were not dominant.
That's fair.
They don't make the cut here. Was there a Hurricanes team I'm missing? It feels like 01. I mean, there was great Hurricanes teams, 80s, later in the 2000s, but that
I just look at the
01
01
team was number
roster.
one.
There were so many like NFL Hall of Famers on one team.
Okay, well,
Love the recruiting down here at that point in time. That was great. But yes, so many great players.
that's my answer. Is the 2001 Hurricanes team. I don't think we've ever had a more dominant team in South Florida. That I looked up the stat. That team scored 512 points over the course of the college season. That's an average of almost 43 points per game. That's impressive. Not
Yeah.
as impressive as the fact that while they scored 512 total points, they only gave up 117. Less
Lot of
than 10
beatdowns.
points per game. So
Lot of
they were winning
beatdowns.
their games by an average margin of 33 points per game.
Oops. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Can I list you some
That's
names?
bullying. Yeah, sure. I love this.
I'm sure. Yeah, this is great. I love this team. This was my all-time favorite team at the time, and before the Big Three era, and before even the 2006 Miami Heat. But I'm just gonna give you their starting lineup on offense: Ken Dorsey, Clinton Portis, Najee Davenport, Jeremy Shockey, Andre Johnson, Kevin Beard, Bryant McKinney, Shirko Haji Rasuli, Brett Romberg, Martin Bibla, and Joaquin Gonzalez. 90% of those guys went on to play in the NFL.
Yep.
And that was the bad unit. This was a team that was carried by their defense. Their defense had Jonathan Vilma on it, Mike Rumpf, Ed Reed, Philip Buchanan. They had coming off the bench on defense. They had Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
RIP. They had Kelly Jennings. They had Entrell Roll, who was a first-round pick and played a long time in the NFL. Vince Wilfork, who I think is in the Hall of Fame or will be in the Hall of Fame, was coming off the bench for that team. Their running back room was Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, and Frank Gore.
Yeah.
They had Kellen Winslow coming off the bench behind Jeremy Shockey.
Yeah.
They had Roscoe Parrish coming off the bench behind Andre Johnson. I think he ended up being a first or second round pick. They had Vernon Carey, who played like 10 plus years in the NFL, coming off the bench on the offensive line.
Weird.
That team was stacked.
No. Ridiculous. Like really like deep in terms of like professional players there. But the statistics is always like, oh, which team from Florida has had more first round picks or something like that. But maybe a lot of those players didn't pop because it was so deep. Again, like you didn't know what Vince Wilfork was capable of, and then all of a sudden he just winds up becoming a long-time starter for a Patriots team and winning multiple NFL championships. So I mean, they were competing against each other more than anything else. Like getting to the NFL might have been easier than UM practices.
They used to say, I remember Larry Coker talking about that team, who was the head coach at the time, talking about how our practices are harder than the games on Saturdays.
Yeah, I can.
And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You have maybe the number 2 team in the nation on your bench.
Yeah.
So that's the answer, right? 2001 Hurricanes.
Nobody else comes close. Like, I mean, the Dolphins, I guess.
I mean, those Hurricanes also went undefeated, so it's not like you can throw the undefeated team thing. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's part of it. No, if it's South Florida, you'd have to go with that Canes team, most dominant. They might have an argument for best college team of all time, and I think I've seen that debate before.
They're in that mix. It's the same sort of NBA debate, like the 86 Celtics, the 90 whatever Bulls and kind of thing. They're part of that group. So I'm gonna go them. But that Panthers team this last year is up there, man. Like that team is that might be the most stacked roster from beginning to end that we've had in South Florida
But
since
similarly,
the
though,
2001 Hurricanes.
they had a hell of a run, almost a Heat-like postseason run,
Mhm.
if I may. I mean, but they weren't
Had
exactly
a
like a
close
high
call against
seed.
Canadians. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they had Game 7 in there too. So I mean, it wasn't like they didn't run roughshod the same way. It was a
Right.
great roster and a very dominant team and on some stretches. It was just a lot of 5-1 scores, and so it probably eclipsed any points per game margin or goals per game margin in terms of like Stanley Cup Finals. I don't know. I'm just wondering how that stacks up because they scored so much, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to claim to be a hockey expert by any stretch, but it just seemed like they were dominating those games, and they did win. They lost a couple boneheaded games, maybe, or gave up some late goals or something like that. But
Sure.
I just think that in terms of when they had those winning games, it just felt like it was like such a
It felt
beat down.
overwhelming. Yeah,
Yeah.
they just came in waves. It felt like the Thunder
Yep.
this past season, honestly. It's just like, what can you
Yeah.
do against them?
Yeah. That's a
They
good
are
point.
they're on the Mount Rushmore of South Florida sports teams, of great South Florida sports teams. I don't think there's any
That's good.
question about that.
No, that's good. I
That's
like
pretty
that.
cool. All right, finally, Ozzy Osbourne. He died at 76 years old after a years-long battle with Parkinson's. He was the frontman of Black Sabbath, who went on to a solo career later, was known also as a reality TV star. But David, I can remember growing up in Coral Springs listening to 105.9 in the car. You couldn't go 30 minutes without hearing Ozzy Osbourne's voice, whether it was with Black Sabbath or some of his solo stuff. I remember when I was in high school, like everybody in high school, you try to play guitar for a little bit. And remember and like learning the opening chords of Iron Man and Crazy Train and stuff like that. We talked a lot about our appreciation for rock music last week, and I think it's safe to say that rock music isn't what it is today, and wasn't the same after Ozzy Osbourne or without Ozzy Osbourne. So I just wanted to shout him out during our Locked Off Heat segment. I mean, he was a giant of it within the history of rock and roll, no question about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a larger than life personality and the legend of what he does and what he didn't do and everything else. It's so hard to parse what he was or what the rumors and legends were about him. And then you see this version of him as a family man in
Did
reality
he really
TV.
bite the head off of a bat on stage?
Still don't know the answer to that because I've heard somebody conflicting thing. I think he said no, and then I've heard other people say absolutely he did, and it's
I
like,
think
oh,
he
you know
said
what?
no, and I think he's also said yes.
It's quite possible. A
So,
lot
well,
of
no, I definitely did
a lot
that.
of
I definitely did
chemicals that
that.
might have changed the perception of what happened
Yes.
that night. So,
It's true.
but yeah, did you ever watch the reality show? I've only caught bits and pieces of it.
I
'Cause
think,
to me, it was
yeah,
just
I've
so
only bits
difficult.
and pieces. I don't think I've ever sat down. I'm like, oh, but I can't wait for Meet the
Right,
Osbournes
the
to
next
come on or
episode,
whatever. Yeah.
But it was just like the teenage kids and the wife, and just like get into arguments. And by that point already, he was like struggling to be like you couldn't really understand what Ozzy was saying. But I love the
Right.
fact that sometimes he was talking, they had to put subtitles underneath there, and
Right.
the accent was part of it. That just that was a big thing, a challenge too. But it was just like to see him in these very atypical family environments from what you remember him as. So
What
here's
was
this.
crazy is you couldn't understand a word he was saying, and then he would sing, and you're like, oh, I understand all of this now.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just do that all the time? No, it absolutely crazy that he. It's one of those guys when they die, you're just like, oh, that feels so weird. Like I don't really. I turned on War Pigs right away when I saw the news, and I was just like, it feels weird that this person isn't here anymore. But it was just he's one of those people that just feel like they're always around because they were so omnipresent and within our pop culture that it's a little strange that he's not around anymore. Even though I can't claim to sit here and be like, oh, I think about Ozzy Osbourne every day. But he was sort of just always a part of life, and now he's gone. So yeah, just wanted to R.I.P. Ozzy Osbourne, right? I mean, just left an incredible mark on music history.
We've got some other questions I know that we'll get to at some point later on this week or next, because I love being able to hear these kind of off-topic type questions because people are curious about different things. But even if there's like the question that we answered before about it's within context of sports, but it's not necessarily about the Heat. I mean, we're big sports fans across everything here. So, I mean, we've watched baseball, football, hockey, etc. So we love those. So keep those coming in, send those in via email, send those in via Subtext, however you feel comfortable reaching out. We'd love to hear from all of you.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.